Myra lived on a quiet colony world far from Earth. The skies above her village were always clear, and the days passed with simple work and simple joys. People farmed the rich land, cared for their families, and shared stories at night around glowing lanterns. Myra was known among them for her calm nature and quiet ways. She wore long modest clothes, not for fashion, but for comfort and respect. She preferred silence over loud words, and she preferred watching the stars instead of chasing praise. One evening, as the village prepared for a harvest feast, the sky split open with fire. A giant vessel descended from the clouds, its metal body shining like a fallen mountain. The people stopped their work and looked upward with fear and wonder. No human ship was so large, and no one expected visitors from the stars. The vessel landed in the fields outside the village. Dust rose like a storm, and the ground shook with heavy sound. From its belly came creatures unlike any human had seen. They were tall, with strong limbs covered in shining armor. Their eyes glowed faintly, and their movements showed pride. These were not travelers seeking peace but warriors who carried themselves as if the land already belonged to them. The aliens marched into the village center. Their leader stepped forward, his voice booming as if the air itself obeyed him. He spoke in a language strange at first, but his helmet changed the words into sounds the people could understand. "We are the Kale," he said. "We travel the stars to test the strength of worlds. Humanity is young. We wish to see if you are worthy to stand among us." The villagers stood silent. They were farmers, not fighters. Yet they did not run, for they had pride in their spirit. Still, fear spread among them, for the Kale looked powerful, and their weapons glowed with strange energy. The Kale warriors walked among the humans, watching them with eyes that judged. They laughed at the simple houses, the wooden tools, and the plain clothes of the villagers. When their gaze fell upon Myra, they laughed the loudest. "Look at this one," one alien said, pointing at her dress. "She hides herself in cloth as if ashamed. Weakness is covered, but strength shows itself. She is nothing." The others joined in, their laughter echoing across the square. They mocked her modesty, thinking it proof of fear. Myra did not answer. She lowered her eyes, not in shame, but in patience. Her hands rested calmly at her sides, and her face gave no anger. To the Kale, this silence seemed like surrender. To her people, it was simply Myra being Myra, quiet, watchful, and deep like still water. Her friend Tomash stepped forward, anger flashing in his voice. "She is not weak. None of us are. You know nothing of us." But the Kale only laughed again, waving their weapons in the air. "We will see. Tomorrow, your people will fight in trial. If you fail, your world is unworthy. If you surprise us, perhaps we will respect you." With that, they returned to their vessel, leaving the villagers shaken. Night came, but no one celebrated the harvest. The lanterns burned without joy, and the songs of the evening were left unsung. Fear sat heavy over every heart. Myra stayed quiet through it all. She helped the elders gather the children and spoke softly to calm them. To her friends she gave only small words, simple comfort, never promises. She seemed calm, but inside her thoughts moved like hidden waves. The others could not know what Myra carried. Long ago, her grandmother had whispered to her about a secret gift, passed down the bloodline of their family. It was something strange, not of Earth but of the stars. Myra had always felt it inside her, a quiet pulse that stirred only in rare moments. She had never spoken of it, for she feared it would bring more danger than good. As she lay in her small home that night, She felt that pulse again. It was faint but alive, as if it was waiting. She closed her eyes and placed a hand over her chest, where the warmth spread softly. She did not know if the time had come, but she felt the shadow of tomorrow. The Kale thought she was weak. They thought her modesty was a cover for fear. But Myra knew the truth. Beneath her quiet ways and beneath her simple dress, something ancient slept. Something vast. Something that had waited for the right moment to awaken. And tomorrow, when the Kale tested humanity, they might learn that mocking her was their greatest mistake. The next morning the village woke to the sound of heavy footsteps. The Kale warriors had returned, their armor bright in the rising sun. Their leader stood tall, his sharp gaze fixed on the humans who had gathered in the open square. "We will test you today," he said, his voice clear and proud. "Show us your strength, or be forgotten." The villagers looked at one another with worry. They were not soldiers, but they could not refuse. Some of the younger men and women stepped forward, holding farming tools that looked small beside the alien weapons. Their hands shook, but their eyes showed courage. The Kale warriors laughed again. "These are your fighters? These are your weapons? Pathetic. You are children playing at war." Myra stood at the edge of the crowd, her hands folded. Her calm expression did not change, even when their laughter grew louder. The Kale pointed at her once more, mocking her dress. "Still hiding, little one? Do you fear to face us? Do you hide because you are weak?" The villagers grew restless. Some whispered for Myra to leave before the aliens pushed her further. But Myra stayed where she was, her quiet presence steady like stone. Her friend Tomash stepped forward again, holding a wooden staff. "We are not afraid of you. If you want to test us, then we will fight." The Kale leader tilted his head, amused. "Very well. Let the trial begin." The aliens drew glowing blades from their sides. They moved with speed and skill, their armor humming with strange energy. The human fighters, armed only with wood and steel, raised their makeshift weapons. The battle began. At first the humans fought bravely. They swung their staffs and struck with strong arms. One young man even managed to knock an alien back a step. The villagers watching cheered with hope. But the Kale were too fast and too strong. Their armor blocked blows, and their weapons cut through wood with ease. Within minutes the humans were pushed back. Some fell to the ground, bruised and bleeding, but none gave up. They stood again, their courage burning even as their bodies weakened. The aliens, however, did not look impressed. "This is your strength," one Kale warrior shouted as he struck aside a human with little effort. "You fight, yes, but you lack power. You are fragile." The others joined in the laughter. They fought not with respect but with mockery, as if every swing of their weapons was a joke. Their arrogance filled the field. Myra watched it all. She saw her friends fall, one after another, yet still rise with stubborn pride. She felt the hidden pulse inside her stir stronger than the night before. It pressed against her chest, warm and alive, but she held it back. Now was not the time. The Kale leader pointed at Myra again. "Why does she not fight? Is she too weak even to lift a stick? Humans, you insult us by bringing this shy child before us." Tomash, though hurt and breathing hard, shouted back, "Do not speak of her that way. You do not know her." The Kale laughed harder. "Then show us. Let her prove herself. Or will she hide forever behind cloth and silence?" Myra's eyes lifted slowly. She met the gaze of the Kale leader for the first time. There was no fear in her look, only calm strength. Her voice was soft but clear when she spoke. I will stand when the time is right. Not before. The Kale fell silent for a brief moment. Then their laughter returned, even louder than before. To them, her words sounded like cowardice. To the villagers, however, there was something different in her tone, something steady that gave them hope. The battle continued. The humans tried again and again, but the Kale struck them down each time. The alien leader finally raised his hand, ending the trial. You have spirit, he said, his voice half serious, half mocking. But spirit without power is useless. Tomorrow we will finish this test. If you do not show us something greater, your world will not be worthy. With that, the Kale returned to their massive vessel, leaving the humans bruised and uncertain. The villagers gathered around the wounded, helping them stand. Though their bodies hurt, their pride did not break. They whispered about Myra's words, wondering what she truly meant. Myra, as always, stayed quiet. She helped Tomash walk back to the village and gave water to the others. Inside, though, the pulse of the hidden power grew stronger, rising like a tide. She could feel it pressing against her, waiting for release. The Kale thought she was nothing, a weak girl hiding in cloth. They had mocked her again and again. But tomorrow would come, and with it, the truth that none of them could imagine. The night after the trial was heavy with silence. No songs were sung, no laughter was heard. The villagers sat together, nursing their wounds and fears. Many whispered about the Kale and their cruel words. Some even feared that tomorrow would bring destruction if they could not prove themselves. Myra sat quietly near the fire, her eyes on the flames. Tomash sat beside her, his arm wrapped in cloth where the Kale weapon had struck him. His face showed both pain and anger. They think we are weak, Tomash said bitterly. They think we are nothing. We must prove them wrong. Myra turned her calm eyes toward him. You already proved it. You fought with courage. They did not laugh because you were weak. They laughed because they could not see your spirit. Tomash shook his head. Spirit will not stop their weapons. We need more. Myra did not answer. She looked back at the fire. Deep inside her, the hidden pulse grew stronger, pressing like a drum beat. She felt the serpent within her stir again, but she kept it quiet. Not yet. Morning came, and with it the Kale. Their vessel landed once more outside the village. The ground trembled as the warriors marched into the square. The villagers gathered again, though many trembled with fear. Children clung to their mothers, elders leaned on their sticks, and the wounded stood tall despite their pain. The Kale leader raised his arm. Today you will face the trial again. Show us your best. If you fail, your world is unworthy, and you will not be remembered. This time, more villagers stepped forward. Not just the young, but also older ones who had lived through hard times. They carried farm tools, hunting bows, and even stones. They knew their weapons were small, but they also knew their pride was large. The Kale warriors entered the field, their armor shining, their blades humming with power. The trial began. The humans charged first this time. They shouted, striking with all their strength. A woman with a bow fired arrows at the aliens, though they bounced harmlessly off the armor. A farmer swung his iron hoe, striking sparks against a glowing shield. For every blow the humans landed, the Kale struck back harder. Yet the villagers did not stop. Myra watched from the edge. Her heart pounded with each cry and each fall. She felt the pulse of the serpent stronger than ever, glowing beneath her skin. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from holding back what wished to awaken. One by one, the villagers were thrown down. Tomash fought bravely, his staff clashing again and again against the alien weapons. He refused to yield even when blood ran from his hand. But the Kale were too strong. A strike sent him crashing to the ground. The Kale leader laughed loudly. "Is this all you can give? You fight like insects against fire. There is no power here, only foolishness." His gaze turned to Myra. And still she hides. She stands while others fall. What worth is a human who will not fight? She is nothing but shadow. The other Kale laughed with him. Their arrogance filled the air like smoke. But as they mocked, something happened. A faint light flickered around Myra, almost unseen at first. The ground beneath her feet seemed to hum softly. The villagers nearest to her noticed and gasped. Myra felt the serpent stir fully now. It pressed against the limits of her body, asking to be free. She closed her eyes, breathing slowly. Not yet, she thought again. The moment was close, but not here. She needed the right spark. The Kale advanced, striking the humans down one by one. Soon only a few still stood, and even they wavered. The aliens raised their weapons for a final blow, ready to end the trial. Myra's hands clenched. Her calm face remained still, but inside her heart burned. She could not let her people be crushed. She could not let their courage be wasted. The serpent stirred harder, its energy swirling like a storm inside her. A glow began to rise beneath her dress, faint but growing stronger. The Kale leader noticed and paused. His laughter faded as his eyes narrowed. "What is this?" he asked, his voice sharp. Myra opened her eyes. They shone faintly now, like stars waking in the night. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the field. "You wanted strength. Perhaps you will see it soon." The Kale warriors hesitated. The villagers, bruised and bleeding, looked toward Myra with hope. Something was about to change. The trial was not over. It was only beginning. The trial ground was silent for a long moment. The Kale warriors had stopped laughing. Their glowing weapons hung in the air, ready to strike, but their eyes were fixed on Myra. The faint light around her grew brighter, spreading like ripples in water. The villagers stared, some whispering prayers, some too stunned to speak. Myra stood still, her hands folded. Her calm face showed no fear, though inside her chest the pulse thundered like a great drum. For years she had carried the secret her grandmother had spoken of, a secret that had never fully woken. Now it pressed against her, rising higher with every heartbeat. The Kale leader stepped forward, his voice sharp. "What are you hiding, girl? Show us, or stand aside." Myra lifted her gaze slowly. Her eyes glowed now, soft but clear like two suns at dawn. She spoke with a voice steady and calm. "You mocked my silence. You mocked my dress. But you do not understand what rests within me. I will not hide any longer." As the last word left her lips, the ground trembled beneath her feet. A deep hum filled the air, so strong it rattled the armor of the Kale. Then, from beneath her dress, light burst forth. The villagers shielded their eyes as a shape began to form. A great serpent of shining energy uncoiled itself, rising into the air. Its body shimmered with colors of the stars, its scales like flowing fire. It twisted and curled around Myra, towering above the Kale warriors. Its eyes burned with cosmic light, and its roar shook the very sky. The Kale staggered back. Their weapons flickered in their hands. None of them laughed now. Their leader stared wide-eyed, his pride cracking for the first time. The villagers gasped in awe. Some fell to their knees, others cried out in wonder. They had heard no stories of such a thing, yet here it was, alive and bound to Myra. The serpent lowered its head close to her. Its glowing eyes met hers, and for a moment it seemed the two shared one heartbeat. Then, with a flick of its tail, the serpent coiled protectively around the humans, forming a barrier of light and power. The Kale leader shouted, trying to hide his fear. It is a trick. No human could command such a thing. He raised his blade and charged, his armor glowing. He swung with all his strength, the air splitting with his strike. But the serpent moved faster. Its body glowed brighter and wrapped around Myra, blocking the blow with ease. The alien's weapon struck the serpent's scales and vanished into sparks. The serpent roared again, louder than thunder. The shock wave threw the Kale leader back across the field. His warriors rushed forward, firing blasts of energy. Bolts of light shot through the air, but the serpent swallowed them whole. The attacks bent and vanished as if the serpent drank the power itself. Myra did not lift a hand. She stood calm at the center, her face steady as the serpent fought for her. She spoke softly, her voice carrying through the roar. I did not want this. I wished for peace. But you forced this day upon us. The serpent's tail struck the ground, cracking the earth and throwing dust high into the air. The Kale stumbled, their pride now replaced with fear. None of them dared to laugh. Tomash, still bruised, pushed himself up to his knees and looked at Myra with wide eyes. He whispered, almost too quietly to hear, so this is what you carried all along. The villagers, filled with new courage, began to rise. They no longer looked beaten or broken. They stood taller, for they knew they were not alone. Myra's strength was their strength, and the serpent was their shield. The Kale leader pulled himself up, anger and disbelief in his face. No human should hold such power. What are you? Myra's eyes shone brighter. She answered simply, I am human. And this is my burden, not my pride. The serpent roared once more, its voice echoing across the land. The Kale who had mocked Myra's modesty, who had laughed at her silence, now stood frozen in fear. They had come to test humanity, but they had awakened something they could not control. The trial had changed. It was no longer a contest of strength. It was a lesson the Kale would never forget. The serpent towered over the trial ground, its glowing body curling in the air like a river of light. The Kale warriors stood frozen, their weapons ready but their courage shaken. They had expected weak farmers with wooden tools. Instead, they faced a living star bound to a quiet human girl. Myra stood at the center, calm as always. The serpent circled her protectively, its bright scales shining in the morning sun. Every breath it took made the air tremble. The villagers stood behind her, safe within its coil, their fear slowly turning into awe. The Kale leader raised his voice, trying to steady his people. Do not fear. It is only a beast of energy. We have defeated greater creatures. Attack. The warriors obeyed, though doubt was clear in their steps. They lifted their glowing blades and fired their weapons. Bright bolts of energy shot through the air, striking toward Myra. But the serpent opened its jaws wide. The blasts vanished inside, swallowed like drops of rain in an ocean. Its body glowed brighter, as if their attacks only fed its power. The Kale warriors looked at one another in confusion. It consumes our fire, one said, fear in his voice. The serpent roared, shaking the ground. With a single sweep of its tail, it struck the earth, sending a shockwave through the field. The Kale were thrown back, their armor sparking as they hit the ground. Dust rose in thick clouds, and the villagers cheered for the first time since the aliens had arrived. Tomash, leaning on a staff, shouted with pride. "You see now? Humanity is not weak." The serpent's massive head turned toward the Kale again. Its eyes glowed like suns, and sparks of energy danced across its fangs. It did not strike to kill. Instead, it waited, as if listening to Myra's will. Myra raised her hand slowly. The serpent stilled, following her command. Her voice was calm, steady, carrying across the broken ground. "We do not fight for pride. We do not fight for glory. We fight only when forced, and we protect what we love." Her words carried weight. The villagers stood straighter, their courage lifted by her voice. The Kale, however, only grew more angry. The leader stepped forward again, his pride wounded. "We will not bow to words. Strength is all that matters." He charged, his blade glowing brighter than before. He leapt high, aiming at Myra herself. The serpent reacted instantly, lunging upward. Its body coiled in the air, and its head struck with blinding speed. The Kale leader's weapon met the serpent's scales. The clash filled the sky with sparks and sound, like thunder and lightning colliding. The ground shook, and the villagers covered their ears from the roar. When the light faded, the Kale leader was on his knees, his weapon shattered, his armor cracked. The serpent loomed over him, its jaws open wide, glowing with cosmic fire. One snap could end him. But Myra raised her hand once more. No, the serpent froze, its fangs inches from the alien. Myra's eyes glowed softly as she looked at him. "You came to test us. You mocked us. But now you see. Our strength is not loud. Our strength is not in showing off. Our strength is in patience, in silence, and in courage that does not bend." The Kale leader trembled. His pride kept him from lowering his head, but his silence showed his defeat. The other Kale looked at him, then at Myra, unsure of what to do. The serpent drew back slowly, coiling again around the humans. Its glow dimmed slightly, as if waiting for Myra's next command. The air was thick with tension, but the battle was clearly turning. The villagers began to chant Myra's name, their voices rising with new hope. They had thought themselves helpless, but now they saw the truth. Humanity carried more than the Kale could understand. The Kale leader forced himself to stand, though his steps were unsteady. He glared at Myra, anger still burning in his eyes. "This is not the end. You have surprised us, but we will not accept defeat so easily." Myra did not flinch. She met his gaze with calm strength. "Then come again. You will only learn more of who we are." The serpent's roar echoed once more, spreading across the land like a storm. The Kale, proud warriors who had mocked humans, now faced not only Myra but the spirit of a people they had underestimated. The clash was not over, but the lesson had already begun. The trial ground was quiet after the clash. Dust floated in the air, and the serpent's glow lit the broken earth. The villagers stood close together behind Myra, their fear replaced with pride. They had seen their strength with their own eyes, not only in the serpent, but in Myra's calm spirit. The Kale leader stood trembling, his weapon broken, his armor cracked. Yet his pride would not let him admit defeat. He turned to his warriors and shouted, "Form ranks. We will crush them with full force." The Kale obeyed at once. Lines of armored soldiers moved into place. Their weapons glowed brighter than before, charged with all the energy their vessel could give. A low hum filled the air as the weapons built power. The villagers gasped. Never before had they seen such light and sound. Some children clung to their mothers, and some of the wounded groaned in fear. Tomash, though weak, stepped forward and raised his voice. "Do not fear. We have stood this long, and we will not fall now. Myra is with us." The people held each other tighter, their courage steadying. All eyes turned to Myra. She stood tall, her long dress moving with the wind, her face calm as stone. The serpent coiled around her, its eyes glowing like two suns. It hissed softly, as if waiting for her command. The Kale leader raised his arm. Fire! Blinding streams of energy burst from the alien weapons. Dozens of glowing bolts cut through the air, each one strong enough to shatter stone. They rained down on the humans, aiming to burn everything to ash. But the serpent rose high. Its body spread wide like a shield of stars. The energy blast struck its scales and vanished. The serpent glowed brighter, drinking in the power. Each strike that should have destroyed the village only made the serpent stronger. The Kale warriors fired again and again. The sky burned with light, yet nothing reached the humans. Behind the serpent's shield, the villagers stood untouched. For the first time since the aliens arrived, the people did not shake in fear. They lifted their heads with pride. The serpent roared, sending shock waves through the air. The blasts of sound knocked several Kale off their feet. Cracks spread across the ground, and stones leapt into the air. The warriors tried to steady themselves, but their faces showed doubt. The leader shouted louder, his pride pushing him to fight harder. "Do not stop. They are weak. Break them." But his words sounded less certain now. Myra raised her hand. The serpent coiled tighter, then struck forward. Its body cut through the air like lightning. It smashed into the front line of Kale, throwing them aside as if they were leaves in a storm. Their weapons scattered, their armor dented. The villagers cheered. The sound of their voices rose strong and proud. "Humanity! Humanity!" they cried, their voices carrying across the land. The Kale leader looked around and saw his warriors falling back. His pride twisted into fear, though he tried to hide it. He pointed at Myra with rage. "This is not human strength. This is a monster's trick." Myra stepped forward, her eyes shining. "You are wrong. This serpent is bound to me, and I am human. You mocked my silence, but silence is not weakness. You mocked my modesty, but modesty is not shame. We are stronger than you think, not because of what we show, but because of what we carry inside." Her words struck deeper than the serpent's roar. The villagers stood taller, their courage burning bright. Even the Kale could feel the weight of her truth. The serpent rose higher, its glow reaching the sky. It let out a roar so powerful that the clouds above split apart. The Kale stumbled back, their pride crumbling. None of them had ever faced such strength. None of them had ever seen a human stand so firm. The leader dropped his broken weapon, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. His eyes narrowed, but he did not laugh this time. His silence told more than his words. Myra lowered her hand. The serpent coiled once more around the humans, its glow softening but its presence strong. She looked at the Kale with calm eyes. "We are human. We are not weak. Remember this." The villagers raised their voices again, proud and unbroken. The Kale, who had come to mock, now stood in silence before the spirit of humanity. The trial was almost over, but the final moment had not yet come. The dust of battle hung in the air. The Kale warriors were scattered across the field, some injured, some still standing but shaken. The serpent curled around Myra, its glow softer now, like a sleeping star. The villagers looked at her with awe and relief. They had survived the trial, and their courage had not faltered. The Kale leader stepped forward slowly, his armor battered and his pride bruised. He had come to test humanity, but he had discovered a power he had not expected. His eyes met Myra's calm gaze. For the first time, he did not see a weak girl in modest dress. He saw strength, patience, and a courage that no weapon could destroy. "You, humans," he said, his voice low and uncertain, "you are different from what I imagined. Your strength is not in your weapons or your armor. It is in your heart. You are worthy." Myra lowered her hand, and the serpent's glow faded gently. Its massive body shrank and coiled beneath her dress, disappearing from sight. It was as if the cosmic energy had returned to sleep, waiting for the moment it might be needed again. The villagers cheered quietly, amazed at what they had witnessed. They had feared the Kale, and yet they had stood proud. They had seen the truth that Myra had carried all along: strength was not always loud, and power did not always show itself. Tomash approached Myra and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You saved us all," he said softly. "Not just with the serpent, but with your courage. You have given us more than hope. You have given us pride." Myra smiled faintly. It was never about showing power. It was about standing together. The serpent protects, but humanity decides to rise on its own. That is our true strength. The Kale leader watched the villagers, seeing how they stood together, how they had followed Myra without fear. He nodded slowly, a sign of respect forming in his eyes. "We came to judge you," he said. "But we leave with a lesson. Humanity carries more than we could ever have known. We underestimated you, and for that, we apologize." The other Kale murmured in agreement. Some lowered their weapons completely, others sheathed them for the first time. The arrogance that had filled the field earlier was gone. In its place was recognition and respect. Myra looked at them calmly. "You have learned the truth today. Let it guide you, not only against humans but in your travels across the stars. Pride alone is not strength. Strength comes from patience, courage, and the willingness to protect what matters most." The Kale leader paused, then spoke again. "We will remember. Your people will not be mocked again. And you, Myra, will be remembered as the human who awakened the serpent. We will speak of you across the galaxies." The villagers gasped at his words. They had never heard anyone, much less a powerful alien race, speak so highly of a human. Myra simply nodded. She did not boast or celebrate. Pride was not hers to hold. She had only acted when it was needed, and the result had spoken for itself. As the Kale prepared to leave, their vessel lifting into the sky, Myra looked at the horizon. The stars twinkled above her, brighter than ever. She thought of her grandmother's words, of the gift that had waited so long inside her. It had awakened not to destroy, but to protect. The villagers surrounded her, holding hands and cheering softly. They had survived the greatest threat they had ever faced. They had stood together, and they had been guided by one of their own. Myra's quiet courage had become their shield, and the serpent had been its symbol. The Kale disappeared into the sky, leaving the village at peace. Yet the story of what had happened would travel far beyond this small world. Humans had shown that their strength was not in weapons alone. It was in their hearts, in their courage, and in their unity. Myra smiled, finally letting herself relax. She knew the serpent would sleep again, waiting for a time when humanity might need it once more. And she knew that the people she loved would never again doubt what they could achieve together. Humanity had earned respect among the stars, and it had done so not with prideful display, but with quiet courage, patience, and the power that had always slept beneath Myra's dress.